Hi, so I've not really posted much recently because I started a new job and I've had a lot to process, to be honest. So we had an appointment with Mum at the psychiatrist. Didn't really get any help. She's probably between stage 3 and 4 dementia, so there's not much they can do. He wants to review her in a year to see if it's deteriorated. Also told us that she has a mood disorder, which didn't surprise me at all. She doesn't really understand it. She has had a few more, I guess, aggressive episodes and some pretty horrible incidents. I've been phoning mental health, GP, and they're all basically going, oh, it's not my problem, I can't help you. So in the meantime, we have been given information, but it's almost like they give you information and then go, off you trot, bye, nothing we can do. I'll just pass you to this organisation now. We've been passed to about, 4 or 5 different people now. I was starting to get quite down about it, to be honest, because I really honestly did think, and it's probably my expectations that are wrong, I did think that by getting to the psychiatrist we would finally get some help, and obviously not. So I am trying to push forward with trying to get my mum some financial support, which is also turning out to be complicated. The psychiatrist did suggest social care support. She was very resistant to that. So in the meantime, I have to continue doing everything with no help from anybody. And I really don't know what people are supposed to do in this situation, especially if they have got reduced capacity, so not no capacity but reduced capacity, and they're just flung out into the ether to try and organise this and sort it all out themselves. I honestly don't know how they do it, and I don't understand why we don't have mental health coordinators in the same way that we have discharge coordinators, you know, when you're discharged from hospital and things like that. So if you're diagnosed with some sort of mental health disorder, or 2 as we have at the moment, that they then give you somebody who says, right, these are the things we need to do, this is how we do it, and I'll start the ball rolling. And, you know, because unless you have dealt with this sort of system, it's like a cross health and social care system, which, although people are trying to integrate it and stuff, it doesn't work together that efficiently at the moment. Unless you've dealt with this for a long time and understand all the nuances of it and understand how all the different areas slot together and what everybody's roles are, it's almost impossible to navigate it yourself. All you get is people saying, well, it's not my job, but they don't tell you whose job it is, right? So they don't say, well, I can't help you with that, but I do know that these people do, and you know what, I'll give you their number, or I'll get somebody to call you, or anything like that. I've had one helpful conversation with a guy, and I think he was the, 5th or 6th person I spoke to, who then said he would text me links to things, which he hasn't done. He said he would text or email them, he hasn't done either. So I'm going to have to remember what he said and try and look it up online myself to see if I can find the right forms that I need to fill in to then get another person who may or may not help. I'm finding it pretty exhausting, and nobody seems to. I know social care in particular, health and social care are very pressed all the time, regardless of whether COVID hit or not. It's always been 2 areas of public sector working that are very constrained and difficult to work in. But you would think that after 70 something years of the NHS, we would have figured out something slightly more efficient than constantly passing you to somebody else. None of who seem to be able to help or have any knowledge of how to help. And I just keep thinking to myself, for people who are in a more severe situation in terms of their mental health, no wonder people die waiting and trying to get through the system, because this is what, nearly 2.5 years in, just probably slightly less than that for us, and I don't feel like I'm getting anywhere. I thought I was when we got to psychiatrist, but now I feel like we're always back to square one with it. And they were talking about the hallucinations and things like that, and I was like, well, what am I supposed to do about these things? And they're like, well, what do you mean? And I'm like, well, if you've got somebody in your house who's hallucinating and getting aggressive because they're getting angry that you're not seeing what they're seeing or whatever, they're getting angry about it at the time, you're then putting me at risk by not supporting me and helping me work out how to manage it. So they're giving us no information about strategies to cope with different areas of what's going on. I have told them she's kicked me a couple of times, and I know other people get it a lot worse, but it's not going to get any better, right? This is only going to progress and get worse. So we're at the kind of early stages of it. So she's already kicked me a couple of times. She gets very aggressive, and I don't know how many of you have experienced the aggression, because I know not all people with mental health and dementia problems get aggressive. But when they do get aggressive and they get right up in your face, it's actually quite frightening, because the expression on their face tells you you're at risk in that moment, right? Because they are so consumed by anger, by whatever it is, and sometimes you don't realize it's a hallucination until you're confronted with this anger and stuff, and you suddenly realize something's not right. That you then start wondering, what if she harbors that all day and turns it into a grudge that manifests later on? It probably won't, but it could. You don't know what's going on up here. So I've said it before, you get sucked into these arguments that you don't realize is an argument until you're in the middle of it. Because the hallucinations are not always what you're told about on social media or in programs or in courses even. So quite often they tell you that like psychotic hallucinations and things like that are quite extreme. Like, so the sort of examples they seem to give are delusions about who you are, like you're a famous person, or you're paranoid about things happening to you or people following you. They're quite extreme examples that you're given. Somebody thinks they're Joan of Arc. That would be an obvious hallucination, but they're not always obvious, right? So, for example, she was convinced one day she could hear something outside and I couldn't hear it. And it was mentioned a couple of times, and I said, look, I can't, there's nothing out there. And then it turned into an argument, and I realized she was having an auditory hallucination. But the thing that she was hearing wasn't something extreme like a nuclear explosion. It was people talking outside. There was nobody there. And the other hallucinations can be visual. So she might think that she sees, I think I've explained this before, she saw sparkly fish in the sky and it was stars. And I'm going, no, Mum, it's stars. And then before you know it, you're in the middle of an argument because she's adamant it's sparkly fish and nothing makes sense. And then when you realise what's going on, you're like, oh, how did I get in this situation? I had another one day where she had an argument with me about a serving spoon and a bucket. And I didn't realise she was having an episode, or whatever you want to call it, until we were in the middle of the argument, because she kept demanding to know what I wanted done with this spoon and this bucket. And I was like, I don't care what you do with it. You know, I can't remember what I was doing. I was in the middle of something. And I'm like, I don't care what you do with it. But she was adamant that I must know, right? It was a serving spoon, which goes in your cutlery. And it was a bucket, which was just an old bucket that I'd been using for cement mixing, I think. And I was like, I don't know, I've got it, just put it outside. But she was getting really angry because I wasn't telling her to do what to do with this spoon and the bucket. Somehow she had connected the spoon and the bucket together mentally, and I didn't realize that at the time. And I'm going, I don't care what you do with it, you know. And it turned into this argument, and then I realized in the middle of it, I was arguing with somebody who was not in a logical place, and I ended it. So these kind of things, you don't hear about them because you only hear about the extreme stuff. So you don't realize what's going on until you're in the middle of it, and you're suddenly confronted with this person who is basically visually threatening you because they're angry that you're not giving them the response that they want. And you know, your mental health people, you would think, would tell you how to deal with that, strategies for recognizing it as it, or, you know, recognizing the signs that it's maybe about to happen or is in the early few seconds or minutes of it happening, and strategies of how to de-escalate that and deal with it. And nothing. They just, and the GPs are saying, oh, I can't help you. These kind of disorders are really resistant to treatment. Does that mean you don't try? Because your experience is the majority of people are resistant to therapy or medication or whatever, you just don't bother trying with anybody. I think that's so wrong, and not what you would expect of our health system. Our health system is supposed to be moving and gravitating towards personalized medicine, personalized, you know, pathways and treatments and things like that. And this feels very 20 years ago. I just can't believe how it has not moved on. I don't know if it's just my area, probably not, because I'm on forums and Facebook and things with different health problems, and they all seem to say the same thing. So it's a systemic problem across the system, that people are constantly dismissed and fobbed off because they're a bit too complex and nobody can be bothered dealing with it, and that's what it feels like. So I've now got my mum, when we came out from the psychiatrist, and we were there for 2 hours in this appointment with him, and don't get me wrong, he was very good. I do think he did not grasp the bigger picture of what was going on. He was very focused on one aspect of the visit, and it slightly annoyed me, actually, especially the next day when I thought back about it, because I felt that 2 hour window was a better opportunity than what we actually left with, if you know what I mean. So but when we left, like, so for example, right, and this is part of the problem that I keep saying to them, I cannot always tell if I'm dealing with symptoms of the dementia or the personality problem, because they can manifest in the same way and they can cross over and overlap. So if I'm dealing with some aggression, is it the dementia or is it the personality problem? Because if it's the dementia, you're not supposed to tackle it. If it's the personality, you kind of can. Although, should you? I mean, they're still classed as vulnerable, right? And before we went to the appointment, I promised my mum I would take her for lunch at this. It's like a kind of it's like a local farm shop thing. And then when we came out of the appointment, she was all elated and stuff, and was like, "Oh, says there's nothing wrong with me." I was like, that's absolutely not what he said. I took her for lunch and I was livid the whole time because I felt like the psychiatrist actually made the situation worse by not explaining things properly. I think he thought he was going to trigger her if he continued speaking about the mood disorder problem, and he stopped himself. So that didn't really get explained properly, I don't think. And he didn't really go into much about the dementia either, just that he wants to reassess it in a year. And I was kind of livid, to be honest. And then before we went to the appointment, we were on the bus going there, and she suddenly turned around and demanded a trip to Canada. I caught that one. That's the personality problem. I caught that one, and I said, well, you better start saving for it then, hadn't you? Even though I know she's got no money. But that nipped it in the bud, because I've dealt with this before. And I did pay for her to go to Canada 3 years ago to see her sister for 3 weeks. So it's not like I don't do nice things for her. And that cost me a lot of money. I had to work very hard for that. But she takes the piss all the time. And this is part of the personality problem. So I do catch the difference sometimes. But it's not always easy to tell the difference. So this is where we are. I have started my new job, quite liking it so far. They're going to help me out by making it slightly easier for me to work from home and do a blended hybrid thing, because I did kind of explain what's going on with my mum, and I kind of almost had a breakdown or something. I don't know, I kind of ranted a little bit, which I then regretted, and then I suppose it shows how stressed out I am with it. So they're like, do you know what, it doesn't matter, we all work from home anyway, so you're quite welcome to, to do that, because everybody else is doing it, and come down when you want, a couple of days every few weeks, that's all fine on site. And I was like, that's great, because it takes a little bit of pressure off. I'm trying to organise myself a bit more at home so that I've got more structure to my day, because I didn't think that was going to happen. I thought I was going to be on site a lot, so I'm trying to organise myself a bit at home so I've got more structure to my day. It's more comfortable working from home, because I thought it was temporary. I didn't really give myself a comfortable workspace, so I'm going to have to do all that now, and that's all fine. But I am still left with the problem of dealing with behaviours that come out of the blue, crap diet, junk food. I don't know what the answer is. I'm not experienced enough in dealing with this on my own and navigating this. Although we've had quite a few family members with dementia and things before, and don't get me wrong, there are plenty of people in my family with an aggressive personality disorder. I'll just leave it there. Although we have, dealt with these things before, this is the only time I have physically lived with somebody 24, well, not, when I'm at work, it's not 24 hours a day, but, when I've physically lived with somebody who's doing this, and I'm constantly dealing with it day in, day out, all day, all night, the pestering, which I know plenty of people who are dealing with dementia patients and family members will understand what I mean by the constant pestering and demanding that you fulfill their every need and criteria of every second of every day is draining. And I have not had to deal with all the sort of administrative stuff, like, the finances, the legal stuff, the appointments, the prescription ordering and collection, the shopping, taking them shopping all the time. Usually there would be other family members helping out, like previously that was what would have happened, but I'm basically doing this mostly myself. So it's pretty intense, and I just feel like there are so many gaps in this system and such apathy. Like, the apathy is unreal. honestly thought, I mean, I've worked in a lot of health areas. I've never worked directly in mental health. I've done work with mental health and staff in mental health before. But the apathy, I think, is what's getting at me the most. You would think that of all sectors, they would be the most understanding, but I'm not finding that at all. And it's very disappointing. I can understand how a lot of mental health patients feel so dejected and quite often degraded by their experience, because you feel like you're just being pushed through as an administrative token, you know? Like there's no real desire to understand the issues and to tackle them with you, and help you. It's just this constant, well, it's not my job, it's not my problem, go and see them. It's not my job either, right? It's not my job. It's nobody's job, really, and that's the problem. Everybody thinks it's your job because you're with family, but actually it's not my job. It's because it's mental health, right? So if she had something else, like, well, she has diabetes, right? So monitoring and taking care of her diabetes is not my job. That's the GP's job. And if she gets quite bad, it'd be secondary care, you know, diabetes department, endocrine. It'd be their job, right? They have a legal duty of care to monitor that at least once a year and make sure that she is properly medicated and properly optimized in terms of her health. So why, when it gets to mental health, does everybody tell you it's not their job? If they've identified her with a mental health disorder, which they have, why is it not their job to make sure she's optimized in terms of living healthily and living as mentally well as possible? It's a bit of a question, and it's one that's not really ever been answered. And although I've worked in health for 20 years, and you know that there are issues in every area, there's always problems, systemic problems that need fixed, and people try and tackle them, and sometimes that doesn't get anywhere, and eventually there will be some sort of slow progress. I think I'm realising for the first time how little progress there really is being in mental health. And you know, you do hear your mental health colleagues talk about it, but you don't really understand it until you have to deal with it, and it's demoralizing. And I can't imagine my everyday, all day working in that, because for the people who may be not as apathetic and have an enthusiasm for their job, it must be hell trying to get through that system and help people. And people in social care, how do they go in to people's houses all day every day and take behaviour like this? And I know not everybody that needs social care has bad aggressive behaviour and negative behaviours like that, but there must be a substantial portion of them that do. And the mental resilience that you must need to have and maintain and sustain for years must be incredible. And I do understand why a lot of people do retire early from it and, you know, don't stick it for 20, 30 years, because it must be mentally very hard to take on everybody's sort of mental health issues, you know, and be empathetic and be supportive and take all that on board and take it all on and try not to take it home. You must take it home. We do a lot of research, obviously, at work. I work in health research and have done for a long time. It's now making me think about what we can do to try and help solve the problem at work. And I will put my thinking cap on and see if there's anything that there's some enthusiasm for at my workplace to try and have a look at, to see if we can help ease the burden. I think it's the mental burden, like I've spoken about before. staff must have that mental burden as well, and I wonder if that is a lot to do with it, because it must get to a point where you just can't take on anymore, and maybe that's where the apathy comes from. Anyway, it's been a bit of a reflective period for the last few weeks, and I've had my own health problems to deal with as well. I've been tripping back and forth to the GP, so I'll get my results from different tests and things in a few weeks, hopefully nothing too extreme. Anyway, yeah, I will put my thinking cap on about this and maybe suggest some stuff at work, see if we can investigate if there's anything that we can do to make this system a bit easier. And I know there are a few people trying to make the system easier, but so far it doesn't seem to have happened. Yeah, so I'm going to go, and I was going to say enjoy the rest of my day. It looks sunny outside, but it's very cold and it's been snowing. I've got a few things to do downstairs. I've got barn door to put up. So I better get cracking with my DIY. Bye.